They told me I was unwanted at the very trip I had spent months planning and paying for. I stood there, suitcase in hand, as my own family told me I couldn't stay with them in the beach house I had rented. The words hit me like ice water on a summer day. Today, I'm going to tell you something I never thought I would share. And if for even a second this feels familiar, I only ask that you like this video and subscribe. It will help me keep opening my heart. My name is Margaret, and I'm 73 years old. Every morning in my small apartment on the Upper East Side of Manhattan starts the same way. The radiator clanks to life, steam hissing through pipes that have seen better decades. I shuffle to the kitchen in my worn slippers, the ones my late husband bought me 15 years ago. The leather is cracked now, like my heart. I make coffee in the same chipped mug I've used for 20 years. It's blue with tiny yellow flowers, a gift from my daughter Sarah when she was still young enough to believe her mother deserved pretty things. The coffee tastes bitter these days, but I drink it anyway, standing by the window that overlooks East 72nd Street. The city breathes below me, alive with purpose while I feel forgotten. On this particular morning in June, my phone buzzed with a text from Sarah. "Mom, about the beach house, we need to talk." Those 7 words made my stomach drop. I had spent 3 months planning this family reunion at the Jersey Shore. 3 months of calling rental companies, comparing prices, reading reviews. 3 months of dreaming about watching my grandchildren build sandcastles while their parents finally relaxed. I had paid for everything. The deposit came from my retirement savings, the balance from the small stock portfolio I had built over 40 years of careful investing. Every dollar mattered on my fixed income, but family mattered more. At least, I thought it did. The beach house cost $4,000 for the week, $4,000 that represented 2 months of my Social Security checks. But I imagined mornings watching the sunrise over the Atlantic, evenings grilled fish and laughter echoing across the deck. I imagined my 3 children, Sarah, Michael, and David, finally having time to talk to their mother without rushing off to meetings or soccer practice. I imagined my 5 grandchildren running through the sand, calling for their grandmother to watch them catch waves. In my dreams, we were a family again, connected by something stronger than obligation. The phone rang an hour after Sarah's text. Her voice was clipped, professional, like she was speaking to a client instead of her mother. "Mom, we've been talking, and we think it would be better if you stayed somewhere else during the trip." I gripped the phone tighter. "Somewhere else?" "Sarah, I rented the house. It's a 6-bedroom house. There's plenty of space for everyone." "I know, but the kids are loud, and you've been complaining about not sleeping well. We thought a nice hotel nearby would be more comfortable for you. More private." The lie sat between us like a brick wall. I had never complained about loud grandchildren. If anything, their laughter was the only sound that still made me smile. "But Sarah, this is a family reunion. I want to be with the family. You will be with us. Just not sleeping in the same house." "Look, Mom, we already found you a place. It's very nice. Right on the boardwalk." My hands began to shake. "Who is we?" A pause. "Michael, David, and I talked it over. We think it's best." My 3 children, my own babies, now adults in their 40s and 50s, had held a meeting about me. A meeting where they decided their mother was unwelcome in the house she had paid for. The betrayal felt like drowning in shallow water. "How much is this hotel?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "Don't worry about it, Mom. You've already done enough paying for the house." But I knew they expected me to pay for the hotel too. Just like I had paid for everything else over the years. The college tuitions when they couldn't get enough financial aid. The down payments on their first homes when the market was tough. The emergency car repairs, medical bills, and countless birthday parties and Christmas presents. I had worked 2 jobs for most of my adult life. During the day, I was a secretary at a law firm in Midtown. Evenings, I cleaned offices in a building on Park Avenue. I took the subway at 5:30 every morning and didn't get home until after 9 at night. My husband worked construction, but his paycheck barely covered our rent and groceries. Every extra dollar went to my children. When Sarah wanted to take dance lessons, I worked overtime. When Michael needed a new baseball glove, I skipped lunch for a week. When David got accepted to college, I took out a second mortgage on our tiny apartment. I never bought myself new clothes. I never went out with friends. I never took a vacation that wasn't built around my children's needs. And I was proud of that sacrifice. I thought it made me a good mother. But standing in my kitchen that June morning, listening to my daughter explain why I wasn't welcome at my own family reunion, I started to wonder if I had been a fool instead. After Sarah hung up, I sat at my kitchen table and opened the photo album I keep there. Page after page of memories: Sarah's wedding, where I paid for the flowers because her budget was tight. Michael's graduation party, where I cooked for 50 people and bought all the decorations. David's housewarming, where I gave him $5,000 from my savings because his furniture loan fell through. In every photo, I'm smiling. But looking at them now, I could see something else in my eyes. A sadness I had learned to hide so well that even I forgot it was there. The Jersey Shore had been our family's sacred place when the children were young. We couldn't afford to rent a house then, so we would drive down for day trips. I would pack sandwiches and snacks, fill a cooler with drinks, and we would spend the entire day on the beach. The kids would play in the waves while their father and I watched from folding chairs that had seen better days. Those were the happiest days of my life. Not because the beach was particularly beautiful or the weather was perfect, but because we were together. Really together. No distractions, no rushing off to other obligations. Just us, building memories in the sand. When I decided to plan this reunion, I wanted to recreate that feeling. I wanted to give my grandchildren the same joy their parents had experienced. I wanted to prove that family still mattered, that love could still bring us together. But my children had other plans. The hotel Sarah found was indeed on the boardwalk. It was also $150 a night. For 6 nights, that would be another $900 on top of the $4,000 I had already spent. Nearly $1,000 to be exiled from my own family vacation. I called the hotel that afternoon. The room was small, with 2 double beds and a view of the parking lot. The woman on the phone was kind but matter-of-fact. "Will you be paying by credit card, Mrs. Patterson?" I stared at my credit card statement from the previous month. The beach house deposit had pushed me closer to my limit than I was comfortable with. Adding another $900 would mean eating soup and crackers for the rest of the summer. But what choice did I have? If I didn't agree to their plan, they might uninvite me entirely. The thought of spending that week alone in my apartment while my family laughed and played without me was unbearable. "Yes," I told the woman. "I'll pay by credit card." That evening, I called my neighbor, Mrs. Rodriguez. She's 78 and has lived in the apartment next door for as long as I can remember. We're not close friends, but we look out for each other. She picks up my mail when I'm away, and I share vegetables from the small herb garden I keep on the fire escape. "Margaret, you don't sound right," she said when she heard my voice. "What's wrong?" I told her about the beach house, the hotel, the conversation with Sarah. As I spoke, I could hear my own words, and they sounded impossible. How do you explain to someone that your own children don't want you around? Mrs. Rodriguez was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "Mija, when my children were young, I thought love meant never saying no. I thought being a good mother meant giving them everything, even when I had nothing left to give." I waited. But you know what I learned? Children who never hear no from their mother never learn to respect her either. Her words hit me like a slap, but not in a painful way. More like a wake-up call. "What would you do?" I asked her. I would ask myself one question: am I paying for their love or buying my own heartbreak? That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about Mrs. Rodriguez's question. Was I buying heartbreak? And if so, how long had I been making that purchase? I got up and went to my small desk, where I keep all my financial papers. I pulled out my checkbook and started adding up everything I had spent on my children in the past 5 years. The numbers made me dizzy. $37,000. $37,000 in loans that were never repaid, gifts that were barely acknowledged, and emergencies that seemed to happen with suspicious frequency. $37,000 from a woman living on Social Security and a small pension. I had justified each expense at the time. Sarah needed help with her mortgage when her husband lost his job. Michael needed money for his son's medical bills when insurance didn't cover everything. David needed a loan for business equipment when he started his consulting company. But looking at the numbers now, a different pattern emerged. Sarah's husband had found a new job within a month, but she never mentioned paying me back. Michael's insurance company had eventually covered the medical bills after all, but the money I gave him had already been spent on a family vacation to Disney World. David's consulting business was thriving, but he had recently bought a new boat. I was not helping my children through emergencies. I was funding their lifestyle while I ate generic cereal and turned my heat down to save money. The beach house was just the latest example. They wanted the joy of a family vacation without the cost. They wanted the comfort of a beautiful house without the responsibility of paying for it. And they wanted me out of the way so they wouldn't have to pretend to be grateful. I closed the checkbook and went back to bed, but sleep still wouldn't come. Instead, I lay in the dark thinking about my mother. My mother had died 10 years ago at the age of 89. She was a tough Irish woman who had raised 6 children during the Depression. She worked as a seamstress and took in laundry to make ends meet, but she never let her children take advantage of her kindness. I remembered arguing with her when I was in my 20s and wanted money for things she considered frivolous. She would listen to my requests and then say, "Margaret, I love you enough to say no." At the time, I thought she was being cruel. Now I wondered if she was being wise. The week before the beach trip, I decided to test something. I had been paying for my youngest grandson's baseball league registration for 3 years. It was only $60, but his parents never offered to reimburse me, and I had never asked. This year, I simply didn't pay. The registration deadline came and went. Finally, David called me. Mom, Connor's coach says his registration fee was never paid. I thought you were taking care of that. I never said I would pay it this year, David. A pause. Well, can you pay it now? The season starts next week. Can't you and Lisa pay it? Another pause, longer this time. Mom, we're really tight this month. Lisa's car needed repairs, and my business has been slow. I almost gave in. The old Margaret would have apologized and rushed to pay the fee. But something had shifted in me during those sleepless nights. I'm tight this month too, David. But Mom, you don't have car payments or a mortgage. The implication stung. Because my expenses were smaller, my money was more available. Because I lived simply, I should subsidize their complicated lives. I also don't have a full-time income, I said. I live on a fixed budget, just like you do. David's tone turned cold. Fine, Mom. We'll figure it out. He hung up without saying goodbye. 2 days later, Lisa posted photos on Facebook of their family at an expensive restaurant. The meal probably cost more than Connor's baseball registration, but they had found money for that. That's when I knew Mrs. Rodriguez was right. I wasn't buying love. I was buying heartbreak, and it was bankrupting me in more ways than one. The morning we were supposed to leave for the beach, I woke up with a knot in my stomach that had nothing to do with excitement. I packed my suitcase carefully, including the new swimsuit I had bought for the trip. It was the first new swimsuit I had purchased in 15 years, and it had cost me $40 at TJ Maxx. I had felt guilty about the expense, but I wanted to look nice for my family. Now I wondered if anyone would even notice. Sarah called at 9 o'clock. Mom, we're leaving in an hour. David will pick you up and drive you to the hotel first, then he'll meet us at the house. Not even riding together to the beach. I was cargo to be dropped off before the real family could begin their vacation. David arrived in his new truck, the one he had bought 6 months after borrowing $3,000 from me for emergency business expenses. He barely looked at me as I loaded my suitcase into the back. Excited about the trip? I asked as we drove through Queens toward the highway. Yeah, it'll be good to relax. The weather forecast looks beautiful all week. We drove the rest of the way in silence. I watched the familiar neighborhoods pass by through the window, the grocery store where I shopped, the pharmacy where I picked up my medications, the bus stop where I waited every morning for 40 years to go to work. My life in New York suddenly felt very small. The hotel was exactly as advertised, clean but impersonal, with a view of the parking lot and the faint sound of traffic from the highway. David dropped me off at the front desk without getting out of the truck. The house is about 10 minutes away, he said through his roll-down window. Sarah will text you the address. We'll see you for dinner tonight. And then he was gone, leaving me standing on the sidewalk with my suitcase and a key card to a room I didn't want to be in. I checked into my room and sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the generic beach-themed artwork on the walls. 2 hours later, Sarah texted me the address of the house and told me to come over around 5 o'clock. I spent the afternoon walking the boardwalk alone. It was a beautiful day, sunny and warm, with a gentle breeze coming off the ocean. Families walked past me, children running ahead while parents carried beach chairs and coolers. I watched a grandmother help her granddaughter fly a kite, both of them laughing as the colorful tail danced in the wind. That should have been me. That was supposed to be me. At 5 o'clock, I walked the 10 minutes to the beach house. It was even more beautiful than the photos online, a sprawling Victorian with wraparound porches and a path that led directly to the beach. I could see my family on the deck, Sarah and her husband Tom grilling something that smelled delicious, Michael's wife Jenny setting a long table, David's wife Lisa chasing their youngest son around the yard. My 5 grandchildren were playing in the sand just beyond the deck, their laughter mixing with the sound of the waves. It was the scene I had dreamed about for months. I climbed the stairs to the deck, and the conversation stopped. Sarah looked up from the grill with what I can only describe as forced cheer. Mom, how's your hotel? It's fine, I said, though it wasn't. This house is lovely. Yeah, it's perfect, Michael said. Good choice. Good choice. As if I had selected it for them and chosen not to stay there myself. Dinner was uncomfortable in a way that was hard to define. The food was delicious, grilled swordfish and vegetables, fresh corn on the cob, a salad with tomatoes from the local farmer's market. We sat around the long table on the deck as the sun began to set over the water, and it should have been perfect. But I felt like a guest. Not an honored guest, but a polite acquaintance who had been invited out of obligation. My children talked around me, not to me. They shared stories I wasn't part of, made plans I wasn't included in, referenced conversations they had apparently been having without me for months. Remember when we went to that new brewery in Brooklyn last month? Sarah asked Michael. Oh, that was so fun. We should go back next weekend. Definitely. Tom loved their IPA. I sat there listening, realizing that my children had been socializing without me regularly. They had maintained relationships with each other while treating me like a checkbook that occasionally needed to be fed dinner. When it came time for dessert, 8-year-old Emma, Michael's daughter, scooted her chair next to mine. She's always been my most affectionate grandchild, still young enough to show love without embarrassment. "Grandma, will you come help us look for shells tomorrow morning?" she asked. "Daddy said the best ones wash up early." I smiled at her, my first genuine smile of the day. "I would love to, sweetheart." Sarah spoke up from across the table. "Actually, we're planning to get an early start tomorrow. Maybe Grandma can join us later in the day." Emma looked confused. "But why can't she come early too?" "Because Grandma is staying at a hotel, remember? It would be hard for her to get here early." The lie was so smooth, so casual. As if the hotel had been my choice, my preference for comfort over family time. "I don't mind waking up early," I said. "I'm always up by 6 anyway." "Mom, really, don't worry about it. Sleep in. Enjoy your nice hotel room. We'll text you when we're ready for you to come over." When we're ready for you to come over. The words echoed in my head as I walked back to the hotel that night. The beach was quiet, lit only by the moon and the distant lights from the houses along the shore. I could hear the waves breaking rhythmically against the sand, and for a moment, I felt the peace I had been hoping to find on this trip. But the peace was solitary, not shared. It was the peace of resignation, not joy. Back in my hotel room, I sat by the window and called Mrs. Rodriguez. "How was your first day, Margaret?" I told her about dinner, about feeling like an outsider at my own family reunion, about Emma wanting to search for shells and Sarah's casual dismissal of the idea. "You know what breaks my heart the most?" I said. "It's not that they don't want me there. It's that they don't even seem to realize how much they're hurting me. Or maybe they do realize it, and they just don't care." Mrs. Rodriguez was quiet for a moment. "Margaret, do you remember what you told me last month about your friend Helen?" Helen was a woman from my church who had recently moved into assisted living. Her children had pressured her to sell her apartment and give them most of the proceeds, claiming it was for her own good. "I remember you saying that Helen let her children make her invisible while she was still alive," Mrs. Rodriguez continued. "You said it was sad that she didn't stand up for herself." I had said that. I had felt such pity for Helen, such certainty that I would never let my children treat me that way. "Margaret, what's the difference between Helen's situation and yours?" The question hit me like cold water. There was no difference. I was letting my children make me invisible while I was still alive. I was funding my own exclusion from their lives. "I don't know how to change it," I whispered. "Yes, you do. You know exactly how to change it. You're just scared to do it." She was right. I was scared. Scared that if I stopped paying for their love, they would stop pretending to love me at all. Scared that if I demanded respect, they would decide I wasn't worth the effort. Scared that the little bit of family connection I had left would disappear entirely. But what did I really have left? I was already invisible. I was already excluded. I was already heartbroken. What exactly was I so afraid of losing? The second day of the vacation was worse than the first. I received a text from Sarah at 10 o'clock in the morning. "Beach day today. Come over around 2 o'clock. They had been at the beach for hours, enjoying the morning sunshine and each other's company while I sat in my hotel room reading a book I wasn't enjoying. When I finally joined them, they were all set up with umbrellas and chairs in a perfect spot close to the water. The children were playing in the waves, and the adults were lounging with cold drinks. It looked like a scene from a vacation commercial. But there was no chair for me. "Oh, Mom, we forgot to bring you a chair," Jenny said. "There might be one back at the house." Michael immediately offered to walk back and get one, which would have taken at least 20 minutes. Instead, I said I would sit on my towel in the sand. It was harder on my 73-year-old joints, but I didn't want to make a fuss. I spent the afternoon sitting lower than everyone else, looking up at my family like a child while they chatted above me. When Emma asked if I wanted to build a sandcastle with her, Sarah suggested that Daddy would be better at it because his knees could handle crouching in the sand. Every consideration was phrased as concern for my comfort or well-being, but the result was the same. I was excluded, marginalized, made to feel like a burden. That evening, they decided to walk to a seafood restaurant on the boardwalk. It was a beautiful evening for a walk, and I was excited to join them. But when we reached the restaurant, there was a 45-minute wait for a table that could accommodate our large party. "This is too long for the kids to wait," Tom said. "And standing for 45 minutes would be hard on your knees, Mom," Sarah added. "Why don't you go back to your hotel and order room service? We'll do this another night when the wait isn't so long." Another night that never came. I walked back to my hotel alone while my family enjoyed dinner together. From my window, I could see them later that evening, sitting on the deck of the beach house, talking and laughing under the stars. The third day, I wasn't invited to join them at all until evening. Girls' day at the spa, Sarah explained when I called to ask about plans. Just me, Jenny, and Lisa. You understand. I understood that a girls' day apparently didn't include the woman who had given birth to all the men they had married. That afternoon, I took a long walk by myself along the beach, trying to remember why I had thought this reunion was a good idea. I passed other families playing in the sand, grandparents actively involved with their grandchildren, multiple generations genuinely enjoying each other's company. What was wrong with my family? Or more importantly, what was wrong with me that had allowed this dynamic to develop? I thought about my childhood, about my own relationship with my mother. She had been strict but fair, loving but not permissive. She had clear boundaries about what she would and wouldn't do for her children. I had rebelled against those boundaries when I was young, but now I wondered if they had actually been a gift. My mother never had to buy our love because she never put it up for sale. As I walked, I passed a small group of women about my age sitting on beach chairs, sharing a bottle of wine and laughing at something one of them had said. They looked so comfortable together, so genuinely happy. I wondered what it would be like to have friendships like that, relationships based on mutual respect rather than financial obligation. When I got back to my hotel room, I called Mrs. Rodriguez again. I've been thinking about what you said, I told her. About asking myself if I'm buying heartbreak. And what's your answer? I think I've been buying heartbreak for so many years that I forgot what real love feels like. What do you think real love feels like, Margaret? I thought about Emma wanting to hunt for shells with me, about Mrs. Rodriguez bringing me homemade soup when I was sick, about the mailman who always asked about my day. I think real love feels easy, I said. Like you matter just because you exist, not because of what you can provide. That's right, Margaret. And you do matter just because you exist. After I hung up, I sat on my hotel bed and made a decision. Tomorrow was our last full day at the beach. I was going to have one honest conversation with my children about how this week had made me feel. I rehearsed what I wanted to say. I practiced in front of the bathroom mirror, trying to sound firm but not accusatory, hurt but not bitter. I wanted them to understand the impact of their actions without making them defensive. But when I arrived at the beach house the next morning, I discovered that they were already packing up to leave. We're heading home early, David said without looking up from the suitcase he was loading into his car. Lisa's not feeling well, and Connor has a baseball game tomorrow that we forgot about. I thought we were staying until Friday, I said. Sarah spoke up from the porch where she was folding beach towels. The house is paid through Friday, so you could stay if you want. But the rest of us are leaving this afternoon. The offer was made casually, as if it were generous. I could stay by myself in the beach house I had paid for while my family returned to their lives without me. Are we not going to have some time together before everyone leaves? I asked. I thought we could talk. About what? Michael asked. About the way you've treated me this week, I wanted to say. About the way you made me feel like an unwanted stranger at my own family reunion. About the way you took my money and then threw me away like a used tissue. But looking at their faces, distracted, impatient, already mentally on the road home, I realized that no conversation was going to change anything. They didn't see anything wrong with their behavior because they didn't see me as a person deserving of consideration. I was a function, not a family member. I was there to pay for things and then get out of the way so they could enjoy the benefits of my generosity without the inconvenience of my presence. Nothing important, I said. Have a safe drive home. I hugged my grandchildren goodbye, and Emma whispered in my ear, I wanted to find shells with you, Grandma. Maybe next time, sweetheart, I whispered back, though I was already wondering if there would be a next time. I watched my family load their cars and drive away, leaving me standing alone in the driveway of the house I had rented for all of us to share. The irony was devastating. I finally had access to the beautiful beach house, and there was no one left to share it with. I went inside and walked through the empty rooms. The kitchen where I had imagined cooking breakfast for everyone was pristine and unused. The living room where I had pictured family game nights was exactly as we had found it. The deck where I had dreamed of watching sunsets with my children was littered with the debris of their hurried departure. I cleaned up their mess, because that's what I always did, and then sat on the deck by myself as the sun began to set. The view was spectacular, the evening was perfect, and I was utterly alone. But for the first time all week, I wasn't angry. I was calm. I pulled out my phone and called Mrs. Rodriguez. Margaret, how did the conversation go with your children? There was no conversation. They left early. I told her about the morning, about watching them drive away, about sitting alone in the house I had paid for. How do you feel? She asked. I thought about it for a moment. I feel sad. But I also feel clear. Clear about what? Clear about what I need to do when I get home. That night, I slept in the master bedroom of the beach house for the first time. The bed was comfortable, the ocean air was cool, and for the first time in months, I slept deeply without worrying about anyone else's needs or feelings. The next morning, I walked on the beach alone, collecting shells that Emma would never see. I found several beautiful ones, pink and white spirals that looked like nature's jewelry. I put them in my pocket, not sure what I would do with them, but knowing they were mine. I checked out of both the hotel and the beach house that afternoon and drove home to New York. The drive gave me 3 hours to think about what I wanted to say to my children when they inevitably called. They would call, I knew, because there would be other expenses, other emergencies, other opportunities for me to prove my love with my checkbook. And when they did, I would be ready. I got home on Friday evening and spent the weekend quietly. I didn't call any of my children to let them know I had arrived safely. I didn't text photos from the trip or ask about their drive home. I simply focused on settling back into my own life. On Monday morning, Sarah called. "Hi Mom, how was the rest of your time at the beach?" "It was peaceful," I said. "Good, good. Listen, I wanted to talk to you about something. Emma's birthday is coming up, and we're planning a party at that new indoor playground place. It's a little expensive, but you know how much Emma loves you. I was hoping you could help us cover the cost." There it was. Less than a week after excluding me from my own family vacation, she was asking for more money. In the past, I would have said yes immediately. I would have asked how much they needed and offered to pay for the whole party. Emma was my granddaughter, and her happiness mattered to me. But this time, I paused. "How much does the party cost?" I asked. "Well, it's $25 per child, and Emma wants to invite her whole class. That's about $400, plus cake and decorations. Maybe $600 total." $600. 2 weeks of groceries for me. A month of utilities. Half of my monthly prescription costs. "Sarah, I can't afford to pay for Emma's birthday party." A pause. "What do you mean you can't afford it?" "I mean that $600 is a significant expense on my budget, and I've already spent a lot of money on the beach house." "Mom, you act like you're living in poverty. You own your apartment, you don't have car payments, your expenses are minimal." The same argument David had made about the baseball registration. Because my life was smaller, my money was more available. "Sarah, I live on a fixed income. Every dollar I spend on something like this is a dollar I can't spend on my own needs." "But Emma is your granddaughter." The emotional manipulation was so familiar that I almost gave in. Of course Emma was my granddaughter. Of course I loved her. But love didn't require financial sacrifice that would leave me eating soup and crackers for the rest of the month. "I love Emma very much," I said. "But I can't pay for her party." "What am I supposed to tell her?" "You could tell her that birthday parties don't have to cost $600. Or you could tell her that Grandma will take her for ice cream to celebrate, just the two of us." Another pause, longer this time. "Mom, I don't understand this sudden stinginess." "It's not like you." Stinginess. As if 40 years of generosity hadn't earned me the right to say no once. "It's not stinginess, Sarah. It's boundaries." "Boundaries? Mom, we're family." "Yes, we are. And families should treat each other with respect." "What's that supposed to mean?" This was my moment. The conversation I had rehearsed at the beach, the honesty I had been practicing in front of hotel bathroom mirrors. "It means that I felt unwelcome at the beach house I paid for. It means that I spent 4 days feeling like an inconvenience to my own family. It means that I'm tired of being valued only for what I can provide financially." Sarah's voice turned cold. "That's not fair, Mom. We asked you to stay at the hotel because we thought it would be more comfortable for you." "Sarah, please don't lie to me. You asked me to stay at the hotel because you wanted me to pay for the house but not be in it. That's ridiculous." "Is it?" "Because that's exactly what happened. I paid for a beach house that I barely got to use, and then I paid for a hotel on top of it. And now, less than a week later, you're asking me to pay hundreds of dollars for another event that I'll probably be marginalized at." "Mom, you're being dramatic." Dramatic. Every woman who has ever been dismissed by a man or child has heard that word. The conversation ender, the accusation that makes you doubt your own reality. "I'm being honest," I said. "And my honest answer is no. I won't pay for Emma's party." Sarah hung up without saying goodbye. 2 hours later, Michael called. "Mom, Sarah told me about your conversation. She's really upset." "I imagine she is. Don't you think you're being a little harsh? It's Emma's birthday." "Michael, were you part of the decision to ask me to stay at a hotel during the beach trip?" A pause. "We just thought, yes or no, Michael. Were you part of that decision?" "Yes, but then you don't get to call me harsh for setting boundaries." "Mom, what's gotten into you?" What had gotten into me was clarity. The kind of clarity that comes from being alone with your thoughts long enough to recognize the truth. "What's gotten into me is that I'm tired of being treated like a checkbook instead of a person." "That's not true." When was the last time you called me just to see how I was doing? Not to ask for money or a favor, just to talk to your mother. Silence. When was the last time any of you invited me somewhere without expecting me to pay for it? More silence. I love all of you, I continued. But I'm done buying your attention and affection. If you want a relationship with me, it has to be based on something more than my ability to solve your financial problems. Mom, you're making it sound like we don't care about you. Do you care about me, Michael? Because it didn't feel that way at the beach. Of course we care about you. Then prove it. Come visit me without needing anything. Call me without asking for money. Include me in plans without expecting me to pay for them. Mom, this isn't fair. You've always been generous. It's one of the things we love about you. And there it was. They loved my generosity. They loved what I could provide. But did they love me? I will always be generous with people who respect me, I said. But I'm done being generous with people who take advantage of me. Michael hung up too. David called that evening. Mom, Michael and Sarah are both upset. They think you're going through some kind of crisis. I am going through a crisis, I said. A crisis of self-respect. What does that mean? It means I'm asking myself why I've spent 40 years letting my children treat me like a bank instead of a mother. Mom, that's not, David, you borrowed $3,000 from me 8 months ago for business equipment. Have you paid any of it back? Business has been slower than expected. Have you paid any of it back? Not yet, but, did you buy a new boat 6 months ago? A long pause. How did you know about the boat? You posted pictures on Facebook. Mom, the boat was a business expense. I use it for client entertainment, but you couldn't use some of that client entertainment budget to pay back your mother? It's not that simple, it's exactly that simple, David. You had money for a boat but not for honoring your debt to the woman who raised you. Mom, I always planned to pay you back. When? When were you planning to pay me back? Because in 8 months, you haven't paid back a single dollar, and you've never even mentioned it. David was quiet. I want the money back, David. All of it. In 60 days. Mom, I can't come up with $3,000 in 60 days. Then sell the boat. I can't sell the boat, I need it for business. You needed my money for business too, remember? But somehow my financial needs don't matter. That's not true, 60 days, David. If you can't respect me enough to keep your word, then you can respect me enough to face the consequences. I hung up before he could respond. For the rest of that week, my phone was silent. No calls, no texts, no casual check-ins. The silence was deafening, but it was also revealing. Without the promise of financial support, my children had nothing to say to me. Mrs. Rodriguez knocked on my door on Friday evening with a container of homemade rice and beans. You look different, she said as we sat in my kitchen sharing dinner. Lighter somehow. I feel different, I said. Scared, but different. What are you scared of? That I've lost my family. Mrs. Rodriguez took a bite of rice and considered my words. Margaret, did you ever have your family? Really have them? I thought about the beach house, about sitting in the sand while they lounged in chairs above me, about being excluded from girls' day and early morning shell hunting. I don't think I did, I said quietly. I think I had the illusion of family. I was paying for the performance of family. And now? Now I don't know what I have. You have the opportunity to find out, she said. You have the chance to discover who really loves you and who is just using you. What if no one really loves me? Mrs. Rodriguez reached across the table and squeezed my hand. Then you'll know the truth, and you can stop wasting your time and energy on people who don't deserve it. And you can start building real relationships with people who do. The following Tuesday, Emma called me. Not Sarah calling for Emma, but Emma herself, using her mother's phone. Grandma? Mommy says you can't come to my birthday party. My heart broke and mended at the same time. Sweetheart, I would love to celebrate your birthday with you. But I can't pay for your party. I don't want you to pay for it, Emma said. I want you to come to it. What did Mommy say about that? She said you were being difficult and that you don't want to come. I closed my eyes and felt a year of anger condense into something sharp and clear. Sarah was using her 8-year-old daughter to manipulate me, and she was lying to Emma in the process. Emma, honey, I want to come to your birthday party more than anything. But Mommy asked me to pay for the party, and when I said I couldn't afford it, she got angry. Why can't you afford it? How do you explain to an 8-year-old that her grandmother isn't rich, that generosity has limits, that love shouldn't cost money? Because I'm retired, sweetheart, which means I have to be very careful about how I spend my money. Oh, Mommy said you have lots of money. I have enough money for my own needs, but not enough to pay for big parties. That's okay, Grandma. We could just have cake at home. Out of the mouths of babes. An 8-year-old could see a solution that her adult mother refused to consider. I would love to have cake with you at home, I said. Why don't you ask Mommy if that would be okay? I heard Emma asking Sarah in the background, and Sarah's response was sharp, "Give me the phone, Emma." Mom, you can't say things like that to Emma. She doesn't understand. I didn't say anything inappropriate, Sarah. I told her the truth. You told her we're fighting about money. Because we are fighting about money. More specifically, we're fighting about your expectation that I should pay for everything while being grateful for whatever scraps of attention you throw my way. Mom, that's not, Sarah. I offered to celebrate Emma's birthday with her at home. Are you willing to accept that offer? A pause. Mom, she already invited her friends to the party place. Then you'll have to figure out how to pay for it yourself. Fine. But don't expect Emma to understand why her grandmother doesn't care enough to celebrate her birthday properly. The manipulation was breathtaking. Sarah was going to tell her daughter that I didn't care, that I was choosing money over love, that I was the villain in this story. Sarah, if you lied to Emma about this conversation, I will tell her the truth myself. Are you threatening me? I'm promising you. If you use your daughter to manipulate me, I will have an age-appropriate conversation with her about what really happened. Sarah hung up. That afternoon, I went to the toy store and bought Emma a beautiful set of art supplies, colored pencils, markers, a sketchbook, and watercolor paints. The whole set cost $45, which was much less than my share of her party would have cost, but it was something special just for me. I wrapped it carefully and wrote a card, "Happy birthday, Emma. I love you very much. Love, Grandma." I drove to Sarah's house and left the present on the doorstep with a note asking Sarah to call me so we could arrange a time for Emma and me to celebrate together privately. Sarah never called. The following week, I bumped into Jenny at the grocery store. Jenny is Michael's wife, and we had always had a pleasant relationship. She seemed embarrassed to see me. "Hi, Margaret. How are you?" "I'm well, Jenny. How are the boys?" "They're good. Getting ready for school to start." We made small talk for a few minutes, but I could tell she was uncomfortable. Finally, she said, "Margaret, I hope you know that this whole thing between you and the kids, it's not personal." "What thing, Jenny?" She looked around nervously. "The money stuff. Michael says you're going through a phase, but that eventually things will go back to normal." Going back to normal. As if my newfound self-respect was a temporary aberration that would eventually wear off. "Jenny, can I ask you something?" She nodded. "Do you think it's fair for adult children to expect their elderly mother to pay for their expenses?" "Well, I mean, if she can afford it and wants to help." "What if she can't really afford it? What if helping them means she has to sacrifice her own needs?" Jenny looked uncomfortable. "I don't know, Margaret. That's between you and your kids. What if they exclude her from family events after she pays for them?" Jenny's face changed. "What do you mean?" I told her about the beach house, about the hotel, about feeling like an unwelcome guest at the family reunion I had funded. Jenny listened without interrupting, and when I finished, she was quiet for a long moment. "I didn't know it happened like that," she said finally. "Michael told me you preferred the privacy of the hotel. Did that make sense to you? That I would pay for a family reunion and then choose to stay separate from the family?" Jenny shook her head slowly. "When you put it that way, no. It doesn't make sense. Jenny, I love Michael and the boys very much. But I can't continue to be treated as a source of funding rather than a member of the family." "I understand," she said. "And for what it's worth, I'm sorry about how the beach trip went. That wasn't right." Jenny's validation meant more than she probably realized. For weeks, my children had been telling me I was wrong, dramatic, unreasonable. Having someone acknowledge that their treatment of me had been inappropriate felt like a lifeline. "Thank you," I said. "Margaret, I can't speak for Michael, but I think some of this is just habit. You've been so generous for so long that maybe they started taking it for granted." "Probably," I agreed. "But taking me for granted and taking advantage of me are two different things." "You're right," she said. "They are." We hugged goodbye, and I felt a small spark of hope. If Jenny could understand my perspective, maybe there was a chance for rebuilding relationships with at least some members of my family. But that hope was short-lived. 2 days later, Michael called. "Mom, Jenny told me she ran into you at the store." "Yes, we had a nice conversation. She said you told her some things about the beach trip that weren't accurate." My heart sank. "What did I say that wasn't accurate?" "You made it sound like we deliberately excluded you." "That wasn't what happened. Michael, I stayed in a hotel while you all stayed in the house I paid for." "How is that not exclusion?" "We thought it would be more comfortable for you." The same lie, repeated so many times that maybe they had started to believe it themselves. "Michael, I need you to listen to me very carefully. I am 73 years old. I am not senile, I am not confused, and I am not misremembering what happened. You all decided that you wanted me to pay for the house but not stay in it. That is what happened. Mom, you're being paranoid." Paranoid. Another word used to dismiss women who dare to trust their own perceptions. "I'm being honest." And I'm done having this conversation with people who refuse to acknowledge reality. Mom, I think you should talk to someone. Maybe a therapist or a counselor. I'm worried about you. The suggestion that I needed professional help for recognizing how I was being treated was the final straw. Michael, I am talking to someone. I'm talking to a therapist, and she agrees that I have been allowing myself to be taken advantage of. She supports my decision to set boundaries. I hadn't actually been talking to a therapist, but it wasn't entirely a lie. I had made an appointment with one for the following week. What kind of therapist tells you to cut off your family? The kind who helps people recognize unhealthy relationship patterns. Michael was quiet for a moment. Then he said, Mom, if this is how you want it to be, then fine. But don't expect us to keep reaching out if you're going to be hostile and unreasonable. I don't expect you to reach out, Michael. I hope you will, but only if you can do it with respect. He hung up. That evening, I had dinner alone and thought about Michael's threat. Don't expect us to keep reaching out. As if their reaching out wasn't always accompanied by a request for money or a favor. When was the last time one of my children had called just to hear my voice? When was the last time they had asked about my life, my health, my happiness without it being a prelude to asking for something? I couldn't remember. The next week, I kept my appointment with Dr. Rebecca Martinez, a therapist who specialized in family relationships and elder issues. She was about my age, with kind eyes and a gentle manner that made it easy to talk. I told her everything: the beach house, the hotel, the years of financial requests, the way I felt invisible in my own family. She listened without judgment, asking occasional questions but mostly just letting me talk. Margaret, she said when I finished, how long have you been feeling like you had to earn your children's love? The question hit me like a physical blow. I don't know, I said. Maybe always? Can you think of a time when you felt loved by them just for being their mother, without having to provide something? I thought hard, trying to remember moments of unconditional affection. There were some, when they were very young, before they learned that I was an easy source of whatever they needed. When they were little, I said. Before they became adults and started having financial problems. What changed? I guess I started helping them with money, and then they started expecting it. And what did you get out of the arrangement? I got to feel needed, I said, the truth surprising me as it came out. I got to feel important to them. But how did that make you feel about yourself? I thought about it for a long moment. Empty, I said finally. Like I wasn't enough on my own. Dr. Martinez nodded. It sounds like you've been in a codependent relationship with your children. You provided financial support to feel needed, and they accepted it to avoid taking full responsibility for their own lives. So it's my fault? It's not about fault, Margaret. It's about patterns. But the good news is that patterns can be changed. How? By doing exactly what you're already doing. Setting boundaries, saying no, demanding to be treated with respect. But what if they don't accept the boundaries? What if they just stop talking to me altogether? Dr. Martinez leaned forward. Margaret, would you rather have relationships based on your financial contributions, or no relationships at all? I thought about the beach house, about sitting in the sand while they sat above me, about being excluded from my own family vacation. I think I'd rather have no relationships at all, I said. At least that would be honest. Good, she said. Because you can't have healthy relationships with people who don't see you as a person deserving of respect. Over the next few weeks, I settled into a new routine. No daily phone calls from children asking for advice I wasn't qualified to give about problems money couldn't solve. No last-minute requests to babysit or run errands. No guilt trips about family events I wasn't contributing enough to. The silence was sometimes lonely, but it was also peaceful. I started taking a watercolor painting class at the community center. I joined a book club at the library. I volunteered at a local food bank, helping other seniors navigate the system for getting assistance. For the first time in years, I was building connections based on mutual interest and respect rather than financial obligation. 6 weeks after our beach trip, David called. Mom, I need to talk to you about the money I owe you. What about it? I can't pay it all back in 60 days like you asked. But I can start making payments. Would you accept $200 a month? I did the math. At $200 a month, it would take him 15 months to repay the $3,000, assuming he didn't miss any payments. But it was more than the $0 I had received in the previous 8 months. That's acceptable, I said. When will you start? I can send you the first payment this week. David, I need you to understand something. If you miss a payment without talking to me first, I'll consider it a broken promise, and I won't lend you money again. I understand. And I need you to understand something else. Paying me back doesn't entitle you to borrow more money in the future. This is not a revolving line of credit. A pause. Okay, Mom. 2 days later, David sent me a check for $200. It was the first money any of my children had ever repaid me, and it felt like a victory. Small, but significant. Around the same time, Emma called me again. Grandma, I got your present. I love the art stuff. I'm so glad, sweetheart. Have you been drawing? Yes. I made a picture of us at the beach looking for shells. My heart clenched. That sounds beautiful. Grandma, why didn't you come to my birthday party? I took a deep breath. Emma, do you remember how I told you that I couldn't afford to pay for your party? Yes. Well, when I told your mommy that, she said I couldn't come to the party at all. But why? I think your mommy was angry at me, and she thought that not letting me come to the party would make me change my mind about paying for it. Emma was quiet for a moment. That doesn't seem very nice. No, honey, it doesn't. I missed you at my party. I missed being there. But I'm glad you liked your present. Can you come visit me sometime? Just me and you? I would love that, Emma. But I would need your mommy or daddy to say it's okay. I'll ask them. A few days later, Sarah called. Mom, Emma has been asking constantly for you to visit. She's driving me crazy. I'd be happy to visit Emma. Fine. You can come on Saturday afternoon for a couple of hours. The grudging permission stung, but I accepted it. I missed Emma, and if 2 hours was what I could get, I would take it. Saturday afternoon, I arrived at Sarah's house with a small canvas and some acrylic paints. Emma and I spent 2 hours in the backyard, painting pictures of flowers and talking about school and friends. Sarah barely spoke to me, but she didn't interfere with my time with Emma either. As I was leaving, Emma hugged me tight. I love you, Grandma. I love you too, sweetheart. It was the first time in months that someone had told me they loved me without wanting something in return. That night, Mrs. Rodriguez and I sat on my fire escape, sharing a bottle of wine and watching the city lights. You look happier, she said. I feel happier. Sadder sometimes, but happier overall. What's the difference? I thought about it. I think I'm sadder about the reality of my relationships with my children. But I'm happier about my relationship with myself. That makes sense. For so many years, I measured my worth by how much I could give to other people. But giving to people who don't appreciate it just made me feel worthless. Mrs. Rodriguez nodded. It's like pouring water into a bucket with holes in the bottom. No matter how much you pour, you never fill it up. Exactly. But now I'm learning to pour water into containers that can actually hold it. Like Emma? Like Emma. And like this conversation with you. And like the friendships I'm building in my art class. We sat in comfortable silence, watching the traffic move below us on the street. After a while, Mrs. Rodriguez said, Margaret, do you think your children will ever change? I don't know, I said honestly, maybe. Maybe they'll realize that they were taking advantage of my generosity and decide to build better relationships with me. And if they don't? Then I'll know I made the right decision in setting boundaries. Will you miss them? I already miss them. But I think I've been missing them for years, missing the relationships I thought we had, missing the love I thought they felt for me. At least now I'm not pretending anymore. 2 months later, I had lunch with Jenny. She had called and asked if we could meet, just the two of us. We went to a small cafe in Queens, and over sandwiches and coffee, she told me what had been happening in their family. Michael has been struggling, she said. He's been talking to his brothers about everything that happened, and I think he's starting to realize that maybe you had a point. What kind of point? About being taken for granted. About being expected to pay for things without being appreciated. I waited for her to continue. Margaret, can I ask you something? Of course. Do you think there's a way to repair the relationships? I mean, if the boys were willing to acknowledge that they hadn't been treating you fairly. Jenny, I would love to have real relationships with my children. But they would have to be based on mutual respect, not on my ability to solve their financial problems. I understand. And honestly, I think it would be good for all of them to learn to depend on themselves more. What do you mean? Jenny looked uncomfortable. I probably shouldn't be telling you this, but Michael has been talking about asking you for money again. For Ryan's orthodontics. Ryan was their 13-year-old son, and orthodontics was expensive. In the past, I would have immediately offered to help. What did you tell him? I asked. I told him he should figure out a payment plan with the orthodontist like everyone else does. I smiled. That sounds reasonable. I also told him that if he wanted a relationship with his mother, he should call you and apologize for how the beach trip went. And what did he say? He said he didn't think he had anything to apologize for. My heart sank a little. Then I guess we're at an impasse. Maybe. But Margaret, I want you to know that I think you're handling this exactly right. And I hope that eventually, Michael will see it too. As I walked home from lunch, I thought about Jenny's words. It was encouraging to know that at least one person in my family understood my perspective. But it was also clear that my children were going to have to make their own decisions about whether they wanted real relationships with me or not. I couldn't force them to respect me. I could only continue to demand it. That evening, my phone rang. It was a number I didn't recognize, but the area code was local. Hello, is this Margaret Patterson? Yes, who is this? This is Detective Williams with the NYPD. We have your son David here at the station, and he's asking us to call you. My heart stopped. Is he okay? What happened? He's fine, ma'am. He was arrested for driving under the influence. He's asking if you can post his bail. The bail was $5,000. $5,000 that I didn't have in my checking account. $5,000 that would require me to cash in part of my retirement savings. In the past, I would have panicked. I would have found the money somehow, because that's what mothers do for their children in emergencies. But as I sat there holding the phone, I realized that this wasn't really an emergency for me. It was an emergency for David. Officer, can I speak to my son please? Hold on. A moment later, David's voice came on the line. Mom, thank God. I need you to come down and post bail for me. David, have you been drinking and driving? Look, I made a mistake, okay? I had a couple of beers after work and got pulled over. It's not a big deal. It's a very big deal. You could have killed someone. Mom, I need to get out of here. Can you post the bail or not? The old Margaret would have been already getting dressed to go to the police station. The new Margaret took a deep breath. David, I can't afford to post your bail. What do you mean you can't afford it? It's only $5,000. Only $5,000. More than my monthly income. David, $5,000 is a lot of money for someone on a fixed income. Mom, I'll pay you back. Like you paid back the $3,000 you borrowed for business equipment? I am paying that back. I sent you 2 payments. You sent me $400 over 2 months. At that rate, it will take you over a year to pay back $3,000. How long would it take you to pay back $8,000? Silence. David, getting arrested for drunk driving is a consequence of your choices. Posting bail is your responsibility, not mine. Mom, I can't stay in jail overnight. I have a client meeting tomorrow morning. Then you should have thought about that before you drove drunk. I can't believe you're abandoning me like this. Abandoning him. As if expecting a 50-year-old man to face the consequences of his actions was abandonment. David, I'm not abandoning you. I'm declining to rescue you from a situation you created for yourself. What am I supposed to do? You can call Lisa. Or you can call a bail bondsman. Or you can ask one of your brothers for help. I already called Lisa. She doesn't have $5,000 either. Then maybe you should have thought about that before you got behind the wheel after drinking. David was quiet for a moment. Then he said, Mom, I'm scared. And there it was, the crack in his adult facade that revealed the little boy I had raised. The part of me that had spent 50 years protecting him from the consequences of his actions wanted to give in. But I thought about Dr. Martinez's words, you can't have healthy relationships with people who don't see you as a person deserving of respect. I know you're scared, David. But facing the consequences of our actions is how we grow into responsible adults. So you're just going to let me sit in jail? I'm going to let you figure out your own way out of the situation you created. We hung up, and I sat in my apartment feeling a mixture of sadness and relief. Sadness for my son, who was spending the night in jail. Relief that I had finally stopped enabling his poor decisions. The next morning, David called me from home. How did you get out? I asked. I called a bail bondsman. Good. I'm glad you figured out a solution. Mom, I wanted to thank you. That surprised me. Thank me for what? For not bailing me out last night. I waited for him to continue. Sitting in that cell gave me time to think about some things. About how I've been living, about the choices I've been making. About how I've been treating you. What did you think about? I thought about how every time I've gotten into trouble, I've called you to fix it. And you always have. But this time, when you said no, I realized that maybe I needed to fix it myself. And how does that feel? Scary. But also, kind of good? Like maybe I'm more capable than I thought. This was the most mature conversation I had ever had with David. I'm proud of you for handling it yourself, I said. Mom, I owe you an apology. About the beach house, about borrowing money and not paying it back, about expecting you to always be there to clean up my messes. I appreciate that, David. I want to do better. I want to have a real relationship with you, not just call you when I need something. I would like that too. Can we start over? I thought about it. We can try to build something better, yes. But David, it has to be different this time. I know. And Mom? I'm going to pay you the rest of the money I owe you within 6 months. I'm going to sell the boat. You don't have to sell your boat, David. Yes, I do. I bought it with money that wasn't really mine, and that was wrong. For the first time in years, I felt proud of one of my children. Over the next few weeks, David kept his word. He called me twice just to talk, once to ask about my art classes, once to tell me about a book he thought I might enjoy. He didn't ask for money or favors. He just talked to me like I was a person he cared about. It was exactly what I had been hoping for. Michael, however, remained distant. He sent me a brief text on my birthday, but we didn't speak otherwise. Sarah continued to allow supervised visits with Emma, but she was still cold and resentful. I talked to Dr. Martinez about the mixed results of my boundary setting. "How do you feel about having a closer relationship with David but not with Michael and Sarah?" she asked. "Sad about Michael and Sarah, but grateful for David. I'm learning that I can't control how other people respond to my boundaries. I can only control whether I maintain them." "And are you maintaining them?" "Yes. It's getting easier, actually. The more I respect myself, the less I'm willing to accept disrespect from others." That's exactly how it should work. 6 months after our disastrous beach vacation, I was living a completely different life. I had completed my art class and started selling small paintings at a local craft fair. I had joined a hiking group for seniors and discovered that I loved being outdoors. I had deepened my friendship with Mrs. Rodriguez and made several new friends through my volunteer work. Most importantly, I had learned to enjoy my own company. For the first time in decades, I looked forward to quiet evenings at home, to mornings with nothing planned, to making decisions based on my own preferences rather than other people's needs. David had paid back all the money he owed me and had stayed sober since his arrest. We talked regularly now, and he had even visited me twice, just to spend time with me, not because he needed anything. Michael had started calling occasionally, though he still hadn't apologized for the beach house incident. Our conversations were tentative but civil. Sarah remained the most resistant to change. She still seemed to view my boundary setting as a personal attack rather than an act of self-preservation. On a sunny Saturday in December, I was in my kitchen making soup when my buzzer rang. It was Emma, standing on my stoop with a handmade card. "Grandma, I walked here by myself," she announced proudly. "Emma, does your mother know where you are? I left her a note. I wanted to give you this." She handed me the card, which had a drawing of the two of us on the beach. Inside, she had written, "Dear Grandma, I love you very much. I'm sorry Mommy was mean to you. Love, Emma." My heart broke and healed at the same time. "Emma, this is beautiful. But sweetheart, you can't walk here by yourself. It's too far and too dangerous." "I know. But I missed you, and Mommy said I couldn't call you this week because you were being stubborn." I was being stubborn. For setting boundaries and expecting to be treated with respect. "How about we call your mommy and let her know you're safe?" I said. Sarah arrived 15 minutes later, furious. "Emma, you scared me to death. What were you thinking?" "I wanted to see Grandma." Sarah turned to me. "This is your fault somehow, isn't it?" Even when her daughter was showing initiative and love, Sarah found a way to blame me. "Sarah, Emma missed me, and I missed her. Instead of being angry about that, maybe you should ask yourself why your daughter feels the need to sneak away to see her grandmother. Don't tell me how to parent my child. I'm not telling you how to parent. I'm telling you that Emma loves me, and I love her, and keeping us apart hurts her more than it hurts me." Sarah looked at Emma, who was standing between us with tears in her eyes. "Please don't fight," Emma whispered. Sarah's expression softened. "We're not fighting, baby. Grandma and I just disagree about some things." "Do you disagree about me?" "No, es with you. We both love you very much." Sarah looked at me for a long moment. "Mom, can Emma stay with you for a couple of hours? Tom and I were supposed to go to lunch, but we had to cancel when she disappeared." "Of course she can stay." After Sarah left, Emma and I spent the afternoon baking cookies and talking about school. She told me about her friends, her favorite subjects, her art projects. For 2 hours, I felt like a grandmother again instead of a financial resource. When Sarah came back to pick up Emma, she lingered at my door. "Mom, can we talk?" We sat in my living room while Emma colored at the kitchen table. "I've been thinking about things," Sarah said. "About the beach house, about Emma's birthday, about all of this." I waited. "I think maybe I've been taking you for granted." It was the closest thing to an apology I had received from her. "Sarah, I don't need you to feel guilty about the past. But I do need you to treat me with respect going forward." "I know. And I want to. It's hard to change patterns that have been in place for so long." "It is hard," I agreed. "But it's necessary if we want to have a real relationship." "I do want that. And I want Emma to have a relationship with you too. Then let's figure out how to make that happen." We talked for another hour, and while it wasn't a complete reconciliation, it felt like a beginning. As winter turned to spring, my relationships with my children continued to evolve. David and I had developed a genuinely close friendship. He called me regularly, visited often, and had even started asking for my advice about non-financial matters. Michael remained somewhat distant, but he had started including me in family plans again. He invited me to his son's baseball games and called to check on me during bad weather. Sarah was the slowest to change, but she was trying. She let Emma visit me regularly, and we had started having monthly dinners together, just the three of us. Most importantly, none of them had asked me for money in months. On a warm day in May, almost a year after the beach house disaster, I got a call from Sarah. "Mom, I want to ask you something, and I want you to be honest with your answer." "Okay." "Emma's class is taking a field trip to Washington, D.C., and it costs $300. We can afford it, but it would be tight." My heart sank. Here we were, back to money requests. "Sarah, if you're asking me to pay for the trip, I'm not asking you to pay for it. I'm asking if you think it's okay for me to let Emma miss the trip because we can't easily afford it." I was confused. "What do you mean?" "I mean, in the past, I would have just called you and asked you to pay for it. But now I'm trying to figure out what other families do when they can't afford these things." I was so proud of her in that moment. "Sarah, I think most families either make sacrifices to afford things that are important to their children, or they help their children understand that not every experience is financially possible. But I want Emma to go on the trip. Then you and Tom need to figure out how to make it work within your budget." "Okay. I think we can do it if we skip our anniversary dinner and I pick up some extra shifts at work." "That sounds like good parenting to me." "Thanks, Mom. I just wanted to make sure I was thinking about it the right way." After we hung up, I sat in my kitchen feeling a happiness I hadn't experienced in years. Sarah had faced a financial challenge and turned to me for advice, not money. She was learning to be self-sufficient while still valuing my perspective. It was exactly the kind of relationship I had been hoping for. That evening, I called Dr. Martinez to tell her about the conversation. "How do you feel?" she asked. "Proud. Of Sarah, but also of myself." "Why proud of yourself?" "Because I didn't offer to pay for the trip, even though I could have. A year ago, I would have insisted on paying for it and probably would have thrown in extra money for spending money. And now? Now I understand that helping Sarah solve her own problems is more valuable than solving them for her." "Margaret, you've made remarkable progress. I've had good help. You've done the work. How do you feel about your life now compared to a year ago?" I thought about it. A year ago, I had been desperately lonely while surrounded by family members who saw me as a convenience. I had been financially stressed from constantly bailing out my children. I had been resentful and sad and invisible. Now I was sometimes lonely, but I was no longer invisible. I had genuine friendships, hobbies I enjoyed, and a sense of self-worth that didn't depend on other people's approval. "I feel like I'm living my own life instead of just funding other people's lives," I said. "That's beautiful, Margaret." As summer approached, David called with a suggestion. "Mom, what would you think about the four of us, you, me, Michael, and Sarah, taking a weekend trip somewhere? Just us, no spouses or kids. A chance to spend some real time together." The idea was both appealing and terrifying. A year ago, such a trip would have been impossible because of all the resentment and dysfunction in our relationships. But maybe now, with boundaries in place and patterns changing, it could work. "Where did you have in mind?" I asked. "I was thinking the Berkshires. There's a nice inn up there, nothing fancy but comfortable. We could hike, play some board games, just talk." "And who would pay for this trip?" "We would each pay for ourselves. I already talked to Michael and Sarah about it. Each pay for ourselves." The phrase was music to my ears. "I would like that very much," I said. The trip was planned for a weekend in June, exactly 1 year after the beach house debacle. As the date approached, I felt nervous but hopeful. We met at the inn on a Friday afternoon, a small, cozy place surrounded by mountains and hiking trails. For the first time in years, I was traveling with my children as an equal participant rather than as the person funding the experience. That first evening, we sat on the inn's porch after dinner, watching the sunset and talking about our memories of family vacations when they were children. "Remember that time we drove to the Adirondacks and our car broke down?" Michael said. "And we had to stay in that terrible motel with the beds that smelled like cigarettes," Sarah added. "But we played cards for hours that night," David said. "It was actually fun." "You know what I remember about that trip?" I said. "I remember how worried I was about the cost of fixing the car and paying for the extra night in the motel. But you kids were so good-natured about it, so willing to make the best of a bad situation." "We didn't know there was anything to worry about," Michael said. "You and Dad handled all of that." "Maybe we handled it too well," I said. "Maybe we should have let you see that money was sometimes a struggle, so you would have understood its value better." The conversation could have turned defensive or accusatory, but it didn't. Instead, my children listened. "Mom," Sarah said quietly, "I think I'm just now learning to understand the value of money. Of working for what I want instead of just asking for it." "Me too," Michael said. "And I'm learning that there's satisfaction in solving my own problems that I never experienced when you solved them for me." David nodded. "Last year, when you didn't bail me out of jail, I was angry at first. But then I realized it was the first time I had ever faced real consequences for my actions. It changed something in me. We talked until late that night, sharing insights and apologies and hopes for better relationships going forward. It wasn't a magical cure-all conversation, but it was honest and loving in a way that felt new. The next day, we went hiking together. The trail was challenging for me, but my children were patient and encouraging. They didn't treat me like a burden or an obligation. They treated me like a person they enjoyed spending time with. At the top of the mountain, looking out over the valley below, Sarah said, "Mom, I owe you a real apology." "For what specifically?" "For the beach house. For expecting you to pay for it and then making you feel unwelcome there. It was cruel, and I'm ashamed of how we acted." Michael and David both nodded. "We all owe you that apology," Michael said. "We were horrible to you that week. But you know what?" David added. "If you hadn't set boundaries after that trip, we probably would have kept treating you that way. We needed to be forced to see how our behavior was affecting you." I felt tears welling up in my eyes. Not tears of sadness, but tears of relief and gratitude. "I forgive you," I said. "All of you. And I love you." "We love you too, Mom," Sarah said. "The real you, not just what you can do for us." That evening, as we sat around the fire pit at the inn, Emma's words from her handmade card came back to me, "I love you very much." But now I was hearing similar words from all of my children, and I believed them. On Sunday morning, as we prepared to drive back to New York, Michael pulled me aside. "Mom, I want you to know that this weekend meant a lot to me. It's the first time I felt like we were really family in years." "What do you mean?" "I mean, it's the first time we were together because we wanted to be, not because someone needed something or because it was an obligation." I knew exactly what he meant. As I drove home that afternoon, I thought about how much my life had changed in the past year. I had gone from being a lonely, resentful, financially exploited mother to being a woman with genuine relationships based on mutual respect and affection. The transformation hadn't been easy. There had been months of loneliness, difficult conversations, and moments when I wondered if I was making the biggest mistake of my life. But sitting in that mountain inn, listening to my children talk about learning to value money and solve their own problems, I knew I had made the right choice. Setting boundaries hadn't driven my children away permanently. It had forced them to decide whether they wanted real relationships with me or not. And ultimately, they had chosen real relationships. Not immediately, not easily, but eventually. 3 months later, I received a call from Emma. "Grandma, I have something exciting to tell you." "What is it, sweetheart?" "I saved up my allowance money, and I bought you a present." She had saved her own money to buy me something. At 9 years old, she understood something that her adult relatives had forgotten, that the most meaningful gifts are the ones that cost the giver something. "What did you buy me?" "It's a surprise. Can I bring it to you this weekend?" "I would love that." When Emma arrived on Saturday, she presented me with a small ceramic flower pot and a packet of seeds. "I know you like plants, and the lady at the store said these are easy to grow." The gift probably cost less than $5, but it meant more to me than any of the expensive things I had bought for my family over the years. "Emma, this is perfect. Will you help me plant the seeds?" "Yes. And then we can watch them grow together." We spent that afternoon planting marigold seeds in the little pot and placing it on my sunny windowsill. As we worked, Emma chattered about school and friends and her plans for summer. At one point, she said, "Grandma, I'm glad you don't give us money anymore." The statement surprised me. "Why, sweetheart?" "Because when you gave us money, Mommy and Daddy were always talking about money problems. But now they figure things out themselves, and they're happier." Out of the mouths of babes. A 9-year-old had noticed something that her adult parents had taken months to understand, that my financial support had actually been interfering with their ability to feel capable and self-sufficient. "Emma, you're a very wise little girl." "I know," she said matter-of-factly, making me laugh. That evening, after Emma went home, I sat by my window watching the city lights and thinking about the journey of the past year and a half. The marigold seeds were invisible in their soil, but I knew they were already beginning the process of transformation that would eventually produce beautiful flowers. Like my relationships with my children. The changes had been invisible at first, but they had been growing steadily underground until they were strong enough to break through the surface. My phone rang, interrupting my thoughts. It was Mrs. Rodriguez. "Margaret, I have news. My daughter is coming to visit next weekend, and I want you to meet her." Over the months, Mrs. Rodriguez and I had become close friends. She had been my biggest supporter during the difficult period of setting boundaries, and she had celebrated every small victory with me. "I would love to meet her," I said. "Good. And Margaret? I want to thank you." "For what?" "For showing me that it's never too late to change patterns that aren't working. Watching you transform your relationships with your children has inspired me to have some difficult conversations with my own daughter." "How did those conversations go?" "Better than expected. It turns out she was waiting for me to set some boundaries too." The next morning was a Sunday, and I woke up without any plans or obligations. A year ago, that would have felt lonely. Now it felt like freedom. I made coffee and sat by my window, watching my neighbors start their day. The marigold seeds were still invisible, but I could almost feel their potential energy in the little pot. My phone buzzed with a text from David. "Good morning, Mom. Hope you're having a peaceful Sunday." Just a simple message, no requests or expectations. Just a son thinking of his mother and letting her know. I texted back, "Good morning, sweetheart. I am indeed having a peaceful Sunday." And I was. For the first time in decades, I was having a Sunday that belonged entirely to me, and I was surrounded by people who loved me for who I was rather than what I could provide. An hour later, Sarah called. "Mom, what are you doing today?" In the past, that question would have been a prelude to a request for babysitting or help with some project. Now, I wasn't sure what it meant. Nothing planned. "Why?" "I was wondering if you'd like to come to lunch with Emma and me. There's a new place we want to try, and Emma specifically asked if we could invite you." "That sounds lovely. Should I meet you there?" "Actually, we'd like to pick you up. We haven't spent enough time together lately." After we hung up, I marveled at the difference in Sarah's tone. She sounded genuinely eager to spend time with me, not obligated or resentful. Over lunch, Emma told me about a book she was reading, Sarah shared news about a promotion she was hoping for at work, and I told them about my latest painting project. We talked like three women who enjoyed each other's company, which is exactly what we were. On the drive home, Sarah said, "Mom, I have something to tell you." My stomach clenched automatically. Old habits die hard. "What is it?" "Tom and I have been talking about taking a family vacation next summer. Nothing expensive, just a long weekend somewhere within driving distance." I waited for the request for financial help. "We were wondering if you'd like to join us as our guest, not as someone paying for everything." The offer was so different from the beach house situation that it took me a moment to process it. "You want me to come with you as your guest?" "We want you to come with us as Emma's grandmother and our family member. We'll handle all the costs." I felt tears building in my eyes again. Happy tears. "I would love that," I said. That afternoon, alone in my apartment again, I called Dr. Martinez to schedule what I thought might be my final session. "Why do you think you might not need therapy anymore?" she asked when I told her. "Because I think I've learned what I needed to learn. I understand my worth now, and I know how to maintain healthy boundaries. My relationships with my children are in a good place. How do you feel about yourself?" "I feel like myself for the first time in years. Not like someone trying to earn love or avoid abandonment, just like Margaret." "And who is Margaret?" I thought about the question. Margaret is a woman who raised 3 children, worked hard all her life, and deserves to be treated with respect. She's someone who enjoys painting and hiking and good conversations. She's a woman who learned that love given freely is different from love that's purchased. That's a beautiful answer, Margaret. Dr. Martinez, I want to ask you something. Do you think I was wrong to enable my children for so many years? I think you were doing what you thought was best at the time with the tools and understanding you had available. But I also think you were right to change the pattern when you recognized it wasn't working. What would you say to someone who's in the situation I was in a year and a half ago? Dr. Martinez smiled. I would tell them what I told you. You can't have healthy relationships with people who don't see you as a person deserving of respect. And sometimes you have to risk losing relationships that aren't really healthy in order to make room for relationships that are. As I walked home from that final therapy session, I thought about all the people who might be in situations similar to what mine had been. Parents and grandparents who were funding their own exclusion from family life. People who had confused generosity with love and enabled their own mistreatment. I wished I could tell them what I had learned, that setting boundaries doesn't mean you love your family less. It means you love yourself enough to demand the respect you deserve. That evening, I was sitting on my fire escape with Mrs. Rodriguez, sharing our usual Sunday evening wine and conversation, when she asked me a question that stopped me cold. "Margaret, if you could go back and change how you handled things when your children were younger, would you?" I thought about it for a long moment. I used to think I would. I used to think that if I had set boundaries earlier, or been less generous, or demanded more respect from the beginning, things would have been different. And now? Now I think everything happened exactly as it needed to. My children needed to learn that love isn't conditional on financial support. I needed to learn that my worth isn't measured by how much I can give to other people. And maybe we all needed to nearly lose each other to understand how much we really wanted to be family. Mrs. Rodriguez nodded. Sometimes the best gifts are the ones that cost us the most to give. What do you mean? Setting boundaries with your children cost you months of loneliness and uncertainty. But it was the gift they needed to become independent adults, and it was the gift you needed to become a whole person. As winter approached again, a full year since Emma had walked to my apartment with her handmade card, I had settled into a routine that felt sustainable and joyful. I painted regularly and had started selling my work at local art shows. I volunteered at the food bank twice a week and had made several close friends there. I saw Emma regularly, and our relationship was based on mutual affection rather than my ability to provide things for her. Most importantly, I no longer woke up each morning wondering which of my children would call with a request or a crisis. My relationships with David, Michael, and Sarah had stabilized into something that felt genuine and reciprocal. 3 days before Christmas, all 3 of my children called me within an hour of each other. Not to ask for help with holiday expenses, but to coordinate their gifts to me and make sure I would be comfortable with their Christmas plans. "Mom, we want to have Christmas at David's house this year," Sarah said. "Is that okay with you?" "That sounds lovely. We were thinking about doing a potluck dinner instead of having one person cook everything. Would you be willing to make your famous green bean casserole?" Green bean casserole. Something I could contribute based on my talents rather than my bank account. I would be happy to. "And Mom? We each got you gifts this year. Real gifts, not just cards or flowers. We wanted you to know that you matter to us." On Christmas morning, I woke up excited rather than anxious. I was looking forward to spending the day with my family, secure in the knowledge that I was wanted there for who I was, not what I could provide. David's house was warm and welcoming, decorated simply but beautifully. Emma ran to greet me at the door, threw her arms around my waist, and said, "Grandma, I made you something special." The something special was a photo album filled with pictures of the 2 of us from our various outings over the past year. On the cover, she had written "My Grandma and Me" in glitter glue. As I flipped through the pages, I saw our relationship documented in photographs: planting marigolds, feeding ducks at the park, making cookies in my kitchen, walking on the beach during a day trip we had taken in the fall. In every photo, we both looked genuinely happy. Not posed happy, but naturally joyful in each other's company. "Emma, this is the most beautiful gift I've ever received," I said, and I meant it. My children had each gotten me thoughtful presents too. David gave me a set of professional quality paintbrushes. Michael gave me a book about famous female artists throughout history. Sarah gave me a gift certificate for a weekend retreat at an art center in Vermont. Each gift showed that they had paid attention to my interests and wanted to support my new pursuits. They saw me as a person with her own passions and goals, not just as their mother. After dinner, as we sat around David's living room playing board games and talking, Michael said, "Mom, can I say something?" "Of course. I've been thinking about last Christmas, and the difference between then and now." "What about it?" "Last year, you seemed stressed and tired the whole day. You kept asking what you could do to help, what we needed, how you could make things better. You seemed like you were working at being part of the family." I remembered. I had been working at it, desperately trying to prove my value. "This year," Michael continued, "you just seem relaxed. Like you belong here because you belong here, not because you're earning your place." Sarah nodded. "You seem happier, Mom. More like yourself." "I am happier," I said. "And I am more like myself. I spent so many years trying to be who I thought you needed me to be that I forgot who I actually was." "Who are you, Grandma?" Emma asked with the serious curiosity of childhood. I thought about her question. "I'm someone who loves her family very much. I'm someone who likes to paint pictures and grow flowers and help people who are hungry. I'm someone who learned that it's okay to say no sometimes, and that people who really love you will still love you even when you can't give them what they want." Emma nodded as if this made perfect sense to her. As I drove home that evening, tired but deeply content, I thought about the journey that had brought me to this point. 2.5 years ago, I had been a woman who measured her worth by her willingness to sacrifice for others. I had been lonely, resentful, and invisible within my own family. Tonight, I was driving home from a Christmas celebration where I had felt valued, respected, and loved for who I was rather than what I could provide. The transformation hadn't been quick or easy. There had been months of uncertainty, painful conversations, and moments when I wondered if I had made terrible mistakes. But sitting in David's living room, watching my son teach his daughter how to play chess while my daughters-in-law chatted with Sarah about their kids' schools, I knew that every difficult moment had been worth it. I had gained something more valuable than money. I had gained authentic relationships with people who saw me as a whole person deserving of respect and consideration. More importantly, I had gained a relationship with myself that wasn't dependent on other people's approval or needs. As I pulled into my parking space in front of my building, I saw Mrs. Rodriguez walking her small dog. "Margaret, how was Christmas?" "It was wonderful," I said, and I meant it completely. "You look radiant," she said. "Like someone who spent the day being loved exactly as she is." That's exactly how I spent the day. We hugged goodbye, and I climbed the stairs to my apartment, the same apartment where I had sat alone and heartbroken after my children told me I wasn't welcome in the house I had paid for. But tonight, climbing those same stairs, I felt nothing but gratitude. Gratitude for the painful lesson that had forced me to change my life. Gratitude for children who had ultimately chosen to build real relationships with me. Gratitude for friends like Mrs. Rodriguez and Dr. Martinez who had supported my journey toward self-respect. As I got ready for bed, I looked at myself in the bathroom mirror, the same mirror where I had practiced setting boundaries 2 years earlier. The woman looking back at me was older, but she was also stronger, more peaceful, and more authentically herself. Before I turned off the light, I whispered to my reflection, "You are enough. You have always been enough." It was true. Now, as I sit here sharing this story with you, it's been 3 years since that terrible beach house weekend. 3 years since my children told me I was unwanted at the vacation I had planned and paid for. Those 3 years have transformed my life in ways I never could have imagined. I have genuine friendships based on mutual respect. I have hobbies and interests that have nothing to do with serving other people's needs. I have relationships with my children that are built on love rather than financial obligation. But most importantly, I have a relationship with myself that is based on self-respect rather than self-sacrifice. I'm not telling you this story to criticize any of my children or to present myself as a victim. I'm telling you this story because I know there are other people out there, other parents, other grandparents, other family members, who are struggling with similar dynamics. Maybe you recognize yourself in my story. Maybe you've been funding your own exclusion from your family's life. Maybe you've been measuring your worth by how much you can give to people who don't appreciate what they're receiving. If that's you, I want you to know something: you deserve better. You deserve to be valued for who you are, not what you can provide. You deserve relationships that are based on mutual respect and affection. Setting boundaries isn't easy. There will be people who don't like your new limits. There will be moments when you wonder if you're being too harsh or too demanding. But I can tell you from experience that the temporary discomfort of setting boundaries is nothing compared to the long-term pain of being taken advantage of by people who claim to love you. Real love doesn't require you to sacrifice your own well-being. Real love doesn't come with a price tag attached. Real love sees you as a person deserving of consideration and respect. You are enough, exactly as you are, without having to purchase anyone's affection or attention. Have you ever felt like you had to buy love from your own family members? Have you ever been made to feel like a burden while being asked to shoulder everyone else's financial burdens? I'd like to know in the comments. Your story matters, and sharing it might help someone else who's struggling with similar issues. And if this story resonated with you, please like this video and subscribe to my channel. Sharing these difficult truths helps them reach people who need to hear them, and it helps me continue to open my heart to you. Thank you for listening to my story. Thank you for letting me share the most painful and transformative experience of my later years. And remember, you are worthy of genuine love and respect, and it's never too late to start demanding both.